Hi, my name is Fran Mayer with the Napa Institute, and welcome to another Napa Institute podcast. Mr. Lai Chi-ying, better known as Mr. Jimmy Lai, is a British citizen based in Hong Kong and one of the most successful and prominent entrepreneurs in Asia. Born in Guangzhou, China in 1948, Mr. Lai stowed away on a boat to the then British colony at the age of 12 and beginning as a child laborer, worked his way up to become a leader in Asian clothing retail and mass media. Mr. Lai and his wife Teresa are Catholics and longtime friends of Hong Kong's Bishop Emeritus Cardinal Joseph Zen. Mr. Lai has been a high-profile and vocal supporter of the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement and an equally vigorous critic of the Beijing regime's interference with Hong Kong's freedoms. This led to his arrest in August of this year and continuing harassment by government authorities. Jimmy, thanks for taking the time to be interviewed. It's a long, long day for you.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is wonderful, to speak to Napa Institute.
Jimmy, you're aware that the Trump administration in the United States has put a very heavy emphasis on the importance of religious liberty on the international level. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has made a big deal about raising concern about religious liberty in China.
Right.
A number of people have observed that the Beijing government seems to have a special hostility for Chinese Catholics and the Catholic Church, and I'm wondering why that might be. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the CCP is very afraid of organization, because if you have a faith, you can easily organize together and oppose them, because for a religion which is the foundation for morality and value, which the CCP does not have, this is where they are most vulnerable. So that's why they have to control the religions, organizations of fighting against them on the issue of values and morality. So they know how vulnerable they are once they have to face the values issues. And I think they don't want the people to have a religion. Once you don't have the religion, you can easily be dictated by their order. Because
a friend of mine, a mutual friend of mine and yours, mentioned that you've made the comment in the past that people make the mistake of thinking that Chinese communism is godless. It's not godless. They want to be God. It's an interesting comment. I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, I think, they want to be God just because they want you to respect them as all powerful. So like recently, Xi Jinping went to a museum and, stand in front of a red quill statue and promote the virtue of suffering. The virtue of suffering is suffering for Xi Jinping. Whereas our Lord Jesus was suffering for our sins, and Xi Jinping wants all us to suffer for his sins. So actually he's more than a God. A God suffers for you, but this God wants you to suffer for him. And that is the moral perversion. You can see how the CCP looks at religion.
Why do you suppose Catholics, I've heard that Catholics play a disproportionate role in the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, and I wonder why that would be.
I think the whole resistance movement was against the very different values the Chinese were imposing on us. For people like us who are Catholic, are embedded in the values of a religion. You know, our instinct urges us to stand up to injustice, to evil. I think this is just instinct. You know, being a Catholic, you have the instinct to stand up for what is wrong. You know, because that's the way that you walk in the way of the Lord.
And Catholics seem to have a disproportionate role in all this, though. I mean, there are other Christians, obviously, in Hong Kong and other religious groups. Is it an organizational issue that gives them an advantage, or are they particularly sensitive to religious liberty given their long experience in China?
I think it's a conscience issue. You know, because you really have a much louder voice from your conscience to stand up to injustice. Mm-hmm. I think it's a conscience issue because you are more sensitive to your conscience when you're facing evils as a Catholic.
Jimmy, your wife has, pardon me, your wife has been a lifelong Catholic, I think, but you're a convert. And I'm wondering, I have two questions for you. What kind of a role did your wife have in your conversion? And why become a Catholic? Why not a Christian? There are many other good Christian communities. Why Catholic?
Well, I think it has to go back to my childhood. My mother was in labor camp, and she was only allowed to go back to the family to take care of us when we were like 5 or 6. So every time she came, she prayed to God, you know, the Buddhist. She's a Buddhist.
Right.
And every time she left, she prayed that we would be safe. And every time she came back, we were safe. And that had a very strong impression on me that maybe some power is protecting us, because we were just 5 or 6 and we were managing ourselves without an adult in the household. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I became a Catholic was because my wife has been very pious, and I always went to the church with her, although I did not convert. But came 1997, I was aware that if they have to arrest 10 people, I will be one of them. I think this fear or need of some power in my conscience that prompted me to look for God, to look for a power that can protect me, to look for a power that can comfort me. And that's why I was converted in 1997, July 7, by Cardinal Zen. At that time, she was Bishop Zen. Mm-hmm. And ever since, it's been really wonderful. I'm really grateful.
And how does this may be a difficult question to answer, Jimmy, but it's very difficult for Americans, for example, to understand how the Patriotic Church and the traditional Catholic Church interact in China. It seems very much more complex than just a simple right and wrong or a clean break between the two communities. Can you give us some sense of how that works?
I don't know the details, but you know, in general, it's just that the Patriotic Church, your God, is being undermined by the CCP. Mm-hmm. You know, the dictate of the CCP supersedes, you know, the teaching of the Bible. And that, you know, in other words, you know, the CCP is the God. Mm-hmm. While, you know, in the traditional Catholic, you know, underground church, you really have a God. You really have somebody that you look forward to, some power you look forward to, some power you feel the presence of, some power you feel the comfort and strength of. And this is very different. You know, when you are in the patriotic church, you feel the suppression, you feel the power of the apparatus of the CCP. But
Jimmy, is the Patriotic Church under the same kind of pressure that the underground church is under in China?
Well, I think the underground church is under greater pressure just because they always, you know, arrest you, suppress you, and I think that made the underground church more powerful, because the suffering they went through create the person they were becoming. The greater the suffering they had, the greater they feel the love of God in the person they're becoming. That makes them even stronger and greater in their faith. And that's why the underground church is so powerful. And that's why the recent agreement or treaty the Vatican had with the CCP was so damaging, by selling off the underground church to the CCP.
Yes, Jimmy, that brings up another question that I was going to get to later in the interview, but you brought it up in an articulate way. You know, Secretary of State Pompeo was at the Vatican just this week pressing the Holy See not to go through with the renewal of the agreement. It's hard for Americans to understand why the Vatican would be pursuing this when there's so much obvious suppression of the church going on in China. Does that make any sense to you, or is there some sort of way that the Chinese Catholics find a reason that's credible in that?
Nobody knows why. Especially that the treaty is secret. Why they want to make it secret? Are they ashamed of the treaty they signed with China? Are there some corruption within the Vatican to do such a ridiculous thing? You know, the Vatican is the moral center or the moral leadership of the believers. When they said nothing against the CCP, when 1 million of Uyghurs were kept in a central, you know, in concentration camp. When Tibet was under the religion was under severe suppression, when Hong Kong people was taken away of its rule of law and freedom, our Pope has said nothing.
Yes.
And that is very, not just very disappointing, this is very damaging for the world that looks up to Vatican for the moral leadership.
See, Jimmy, I wonder if I put myself in the seat of Vatican diplomacy, I might articulate the policy this way. Well, the Vatican's been around a very long time. They've dealt with all sorts of governments. They've survived them all, and they're going to survive the Chinese Communist Party as well. And the future, from the Vatican point of view, is not with the United States, which they might regard as a declining power, and China as an obviously rising power. I mean, that's the way that I would go about trying to justify the policy. But I suspect you might disagree and think that on the other hand, the Vatican may be completely misunderstanding or misreading the durability of the Chinese Communist Party and the determination of the Beijing regime.
Well, when you talk about China is powerful, it's only in a way of raw power, material power. But as a religion, the power is virtual. The power is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Vatican cannot forsake the believer who look for its virtue and moral power for the raw power of material. And this is where the Pope has gone wrong. You know, yes, China is a big country. Many, many people, 1.45 billion people, that could be the potential believer of Catholic. But if this 1.4 billion people has no power of virtue, what are they? Just a mass of melons.
Mm-hmm.
The Vatican can only insist on its virtue and moral power to convert the Chinese people from the dictatorship of atheism. Everybody's looking, you know, Chinese people are looking for a faith in addition to their life, material life. Where they lack is not material, because China has definitely improved people's wealth, you know, livelihood in the last 40 years.
That's very significant.
The greater material success they have, the more vacuum and void they feel in the heart, and then the more they want religion, the more they want virtue and moral to live a meaningful life, which the Vatican is not giving them, which the Vatican is taking away from them. When they are aligned with the CCP, who has suppressed them in the spiritual pursuit. This is really ridiculous.
Yes.
This is something very disappointing.
You know, I think you talk about a vacuum, and it's very obvious that one of the things that the Chinese Communist Party was successful at was completely erasing, completely destroying traditional Chinese religions, and that vacuum created gives Christianity an enormous opportunity.
Exactly.
But it seems, based on your comments, that the Vatican is gambling in a way that's extremely dangerous, and probably has made the wrong assessment of the situation based on your observations of China.
Yeah, the Vatican should be should uphold the moral and virtue values to the Chinese people when they need it the most. Because the vacuum is such a good opportunity for Catholicism to fill in, to give people the Lord's grace, and have, they let them feel that life is just more than just bread. Life has a greater meaning.
Jimmy, well, I have to smile here because you and I both know that China is probably, well, certainly one of the most advanced surveillance states in the world, not the most. So it's very possible that you're being listened to right now. And,
definitely.
And that leads to the question about your arrest. I mean, why were you arrested? How did that affect you and your wife? And how does that fit into the harassment that you've had to go through because of your support of the pro-democracy movement?
Well, I support the democracy movement for the last 30 years, because just based on the Lord's teaching that your life is not about yourself. When you live yourself above your own self-interest, you find the meaning of life. You find you're doing the right thing, and which is so wonderful. It changed my life in a different thing. I'm facing jail time. I'm facing, whatever happened. I don't know, I got a few charges, I got a serious charge under the national security law, which can, transpire into my jail time in Hong Kong or in China. But the way I look at it, if I suffer for the right cause, it only defines the person I'm becoming. It can only be good for me to become a better person. If you believe in the Lord, if you believe that all suffering has a reason and the Lord is suffering with me, it will definitely define the person I'm becoming. So I'm at peace with it. And this place has given me so much.
So,
It's
Jim,
the time.
when you,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, sorry. If now is the payback time for me, I'm 73. It's a redemption in my life. That's great. I gotta redeem myself eventually.
Jimmy, when you first went to the colony of Hong Kong, I mean, it was British run. There was the rule of law.
Right.
Under the 1997 agreement, Hong Kong is a special autonomous region. To what degree does the law really still matter in Hong Kong? I mean, you've been arrested and you're charged.
Right.
But it occurs to me that are you really going to get a fair trial? Is this simply intimidation by the government? Is the law does the law still mean something significant in Hong Kong compared to 30 years ago?
Well, I think the national security law supersedes our rule of law, supersedes the common law, the basic law. So, law as we know it does not exist. So whether I have a fair trial, it all depends on the political expedience. Because, I don't know what I will be charged. They haven't charged me yet, It is very, very clear to us Hong Kong people that the national security law definitely had taken away our rule of law and freedom while we are fighting for democracy. The CCP always say that, the British never gave you democracy. Why now you are in the embrace of your country? You're fighting for something that the British did not give you. Are you discriminating your own country against as opposed to British? No. The British did not give us the democracy, but the British gave us the freedom of speech, the rule of law, the property right, the freedom of religion, the freedom of assembly, all that freedom institution that we grow up with, which becomes our instinct, our second nature. And that's why we react to the CCP's encroachment on our rule of law and freedom so strongly, just because we feel that the most precious thing that make us free people are being taken away. Because the free institution is all we are so used to, is all that is part of our life is now being destroyed. And that's why we have to fight.
What does your family think about all this? I mean, they watch you under pressure, and it has to be a huge burden for them to bear as well.
Well, they're very supportive. But one thing I dare not to think is, whatever they would do to me, I don't mind. Would I jeopardize my wife, my children because of all my stands? Mm-hmm. That I really worry. I always said I have no fear. I don't let fear to frighten me. But when I think about this, I really have fear. I'm not as free or freer as I thought I would be.
Yes.
So, yeah, they're very supportive because we're very close family. But it doesn't mean that I have to put them into the same suffering that I will have to face.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I worry about.
Jimmy, you're a British citizen.
Yes.
You can work and live anywhere. I mean, you're very successful at what you do. You can be successful anywhere in Asia or anywhere in the world, frankly. You can work from London. You're a British citizen. Why do you stay? I mean, you're risking your freedom. You're risking harassment from the government, and yet you haven't left. I'm just wondering why that's so.
Well, I was arrested, and the last time I was put in the police station, and I was kept in the temporary holding place. I was sleep on the floor, and I thought, wow, if I knew that I had to sleep on the floor and facing jail time, at the time I didn't know that they would let me out. Would I be doing the same thing? And the answer was very quick, yes, I will be doing the same thing, because this is the way I am. This is my character. If character is destiny, it's God's blessing. If I go away, I not only give up my destiny, I gave up God. I gave up the religion. I gave up what I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
I am what I am. I am what I believe. I cannot change it. If I cannot change it, I have to accept my fate with grace.
Jimmy,
And
what
that's
is to what degree is Cardinal Zen, who I know is a good friend of yours, to what degree is he an inspiration for you? And what about Cardinal Zen attracts him so powerfully to so many people?
Well, you can see from what he did just now. At the age of 88, he traveled to Vatican to ask for an audience of the Pope to stop appointing the next bishop, which everybody knows is Chinese leaning. It's a Chinese puppet. That would change the scenes and the quintessential of the Catholic Church here.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that, I don't know whether he did it. I heard that he will kneel down until the Pope receive him. Maybe somebody was dissuade him from doing so, but the Pope refused to see him. And you see that, he did not spare any effort for the good of the church, for the virtue of his faith. This is the Cardinal Zen.
He's a remarkable man.
Remarkable man.
I have one more question for you, Jimmy. China is hard for Americans to understand, and what's the message that you would want to tell American Catholics and American Christians in general to be cautious about in American dealings with China? I mean, how should we think about China as Christians and as Catholics?
The first, let's not idealize about CCP. I think the West has been idealized about CCP using the theory that the richer they become, the more they are like us.
Mm-hmm.
Now we learn it is not true. Second, in life, what's most important is the values and morality that underlie the harmony and the peace of our life. Now the CCP's behavior is threatening it. You can see from the way they deal with the world. Even the NBA, even Hollywood, even Disneyland, even the Disney, all this shows to you CCP is using its economic power to impose its values, which is so contrary to us, on us.
Mm-hmm.
Insists to change the way of our life by changing our value system. This is the world, this is the reality we have to become. We have to look at CCP as the way it is. I think the recent pandemic, the COVID-19, is a Pearl Harbor event, not just to the American people, it's to the world at large, to wake up from the complacence we had about an idealized China, or idealized CCP. We should look at the facts. We should look at what they have done to the world, how they deal with the world. I think President Trump is a businessman, is very different from all the politicians of idealization. He really deal with China with hardball. He really deals with China with reality. I think that's the way he deals with it, and that's the right way.
Yes.
I think American people should look at the reality and should look at the value and the morality which underline their life now is being threatened, which the issue that we are facing now, the issue we are facing now is China definitely is going to be the most powerful economically in the world. Now is a time for us to change China's attitude, to assimilate into the values of this free world.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they will change us to theirs. And our life, the life we know it, if not destroyed, will be seriously disturbed.
Is there anything that gives you hope? I mean, and you face an awful lot of challenges, Jimmy, but what gives you hope on a daily basis when you get up, when you deal with your family?
I think what gives me hope is the world is definitely going to be more enlightened, more open, and what gives me hope is because the behavior of the CCP has waken up the people in the West, especially in America, how important values and morality is. When people are awareness of the values and morality imperative, I think politics will have to change with people's sentiment, awareness. I think now, thanks to CCP, values and morality are coming back to politics.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the most powerful weapon the world has against CCP, which does not have virtue, values, morality that we share with.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the greatest vulnerability? Yes, I hope. I think, people realize how important values and morality is the way that going forward, we will be able to change China.
You're an extraordinary man, Jimmy, and I really appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you.
Very much, really. God
Thank
bless
you.
you. God bless your family and all the great work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you
bless
very
you.
much. Bye-bye.